Gaming and BS, episode 275, coming to you Monday, January 6th, 2020. Welcome to Gaming and BS, a tabletop RPG podcast. Happy 2020! I'm Sean.
I'm Brett. I'm glad there. We're doing the intro, and I realized on the note it still said 2019. And I was like, oh my God, I got the wrong date. Panic, scribble, scrabble.
Panic at the Disco.
Yeah. I don't write checks anymore, so I don't have the... I wrote 2019 on my checks. I don't write checks.
Hey,
Yeah.
don't put 20 just for your date. Can always be manipulated.
Oh, that's true.
Got to write out the full year, ladies and
2020.
gentlemen.
So no one tries to backdate your check on
That's
you.
right.
Or future date your check.
Right.
Yeah.
You never know. A little helpful tip from Uncle Shawnee.
There you go. Did you get any gaming in last weekend, man?
No.
No.
Gaming kicks off the new year. First time since, I don't know, before Christmas for sure.
We were talking
Call
about that
Cthulhu.
before we got on, where holidays are kind of weird. Sometimes you can get like these spurts of gaming, at least within our schedules, and even the forums and some of the online communities I follow kind of dry up a little bit over the holidays, which I sometimes like, oh, not much going on. Then the other part of me is like, hey, that's pretty cool. People got other shit going on.
Yeah.
They're not here. They're busy. They're doing stuff with their families, their friends, or they've got cool holiday stuff going. So that's really cool.
Right.
But for me, the first kickoff for 2019 will be EverCon, which is, by the time this drops, will be the next weekend, January 10, 11, 12, evercon.org. Check that out. Sean, you still coming? You're going to be there Saturday?
I'm going to be there, man.
Awesome.
Bells on.
That's awesome. That's how you can find Sean at a con. He's the one with the bells.
That's right.
Let's see here. Chris Nizak and I met to talk about Avalon 2020 plans, some of the stuff we want to put together. We've got some more. We have Iron Shoes and Blacksmith's Folly, along with the original core setting book for Avalon. All that stuff's out. Excuse me, on drive-through. And there's the other components from the Kickstarter that will be out in individual PDFs, which will be hitting pretty quick, I think, in the next few weeks. But for 2020, we've got some stuff in store with basically character-focused stuff. One of the things that Chris and I talked about, which I think is important, is I think the setting book and the adventures and stuff really help the game master, at least from my perspective, what readers have told me. Hey, they help me set up a cool world and a neighborhood and blah, 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 and that's great. What I want to do is make it so that the players have Avalon-flavored themed stuff to work with. So thinking of like, in D&D 5e, you've got backgrounds, the merits, the flaws, the bonds, that type of stuff. And take the standard stuff, but tweak it a little bit, work it over a little bit. I know they did some of that for Eberron and a few other settings, just so you can have that extra flavor to inject into your player character, because then it helps you build this really kick-ass character and do some of the work for you ahead of time. Like, hey, if you take this background, this is how this would fit really well into this type of environment, and then that just helps you all the better to role play with type of thing. So that'll be happening. I've got a few other things cooking too, but got some kind of player focused for a little bit, I think.
Man.
We'll see how that goes.
What I would have done to been a fly on that wall with you and the Sneezak.
It's always a good time, actually.
Man.
We have a lot of fun.
Ideas are crazy.
It's just huge.
Ideas abound.
Yes. So anyway, cool stuff coming. Any announcements from you, Sean? Anything?
No.
No? Okay.
Well, do we want to talk about Lou now, or do we want to do it in die roll?
I guess we could talk about it now. Yeah. We'll throw a link in the show notes and whatnot. But Lou Zaki, I don't know if you've heard of Zucchi. People have said Zucchi Dice or Zaki Dice, the Colonel, the one and only. Back in the day, I actually, while drinking heavily with Matt Forbeck and Robert Schwab, Gary Kahn, I'd forgotten Lou's importance in gaming history, really. He was like the guy. When you were ordering gaming supplies, it was Lou. His dice, his games, all that stuff. That was a really important thing. And he's been a kind of a pillar in that old school community. And a lot of people, because of Lou and his love for the hobby and pushing and helping to do all this stuff, this is how you get polyhedrals mass produced and all that good stuff. So he recently had a tragedy, a bit of a fire. Took out the garage, which has basically been his home office, the place where he had a lot of products stored, game development stuff. Think of any small business owner running stuff out of their home and have a fire that destroys that portion of their home. So that is unfortunately what happened to Lou. All reports that I've seen is Lou and family are fine, but it's the damage to home and property and to the hobby stuff that he was working on. So there is a GoFundMe out there to try to help Lou get back on his feet and reclaim some of the loss that he took with that. So if you're feeling in the giving mood and that's something you'd like to do, we'll have a link in the show notes to that. So
yeah, we'll have a link to the GoFundMe. There was an update. Derek Harris is the one organizes the GoFundMe for Lou.
Cool.
We posted yesterday, as of this recording, that Lou is going to be attending TupeloCon.
Tupelo.
Tupelo?
There you go. Yeah,
Tupelo. In Mississippi.
Oh, very cool.
March 7th and 8th. So, despite the tragedy, life goes on.
Yeah.
So, other than that, I don't have any announcements or anything that I can remember.
Let's roll in the random encounter. Keep it rolling.
Right. Still holiday season.
Yeah, a little thin, but that's okay.
Yeah. Scrounged up a few.
So you've got this first one out there, but I don't know who the hell wrote it in or who is it from.
I was probably in mid-thought.
Looks like a neat quote, but there's nothing attributed.
It's the Ray Otis episode, and I could tell you who said that in just 1 second. It was a very long second about the next game by, well, he goes by is it Eirvit? Eirvit. It's Gabe Dive.
Oh.
Gabe Diving says this.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So.
Now I'm going to make you read it after you did that.
That's fine. So Gabe on the forum, Ray got some positive comments about his write-up about the next game that we featured last episode.
Yep.
So Gabe commented, I just took the first part because Gabe goes into his game after that. So he says, the metaphor I devised for this. Okay, so people that didn't listen to last episode, Ray mentioned, hey, live in the moment, make the game that you're playing the best it can be. Don't sweat trying to find a game that you think will be better or fill a need that you are missing.
Yeah, play it like you stole it. Play hard. Play to have the best, most amount of fun you can.
So to get the full context, listen to episode 274 for God's sake.
Darn right.
But Gabe goes into this. He says, the metaphor I devised for this, though perhaps I'm talking about something different, was, quote unquote, looking into other people's backyards. What I mean is that I kept hearing about great games and I kept hearing glowing testimonials from those who were playing them, that I kept wanting to do that rather than focusing on and remaining content with the emerging narrative I already had on hand.
I think this is really wise, and I haven't put it in these words, but I do a very similar thing. Maybe that's why I think this is so wise. But anyway, if I'm like right now I'm running Delta Green. I have other stuff I want to do after Delta Green, but I burn damn near zero time on it. Like, oh, that'd be neat. If I find something that would go really good into my next Bad Magic game, it goes on a Bad Magic pile. I literally have a pile of books off of my left here that I just put things on. Like, oh, that's good reference material for that. Whenever I get to it. Or I'll take a note and push it away. But I honestly do my best to try to immerse myself in the game I'm playing as much as I can, or the one I'm running. If I'm playing in a game, I find it a little bit easier to kind of flit in and out to a point. But even then, if we're going to be playing D&D 5e in Alpha's, Demon Lords campaign, all right, read my character, get brushed up on it, make sure I check out a couple things here and there, get back in the 5e mode, and then go. And I'm not rereading my Astonishing Swordsman, Sorcerer's Hyperborean stuff just yet. When we do the episode with Tim Deshane and we talk about that, yeah, I'll go back through, bone up on my rules and whatnot and do a read. But otherwise, when I'm running a game, I try to stay as close to that material as I can. I think it really, it helps me stick in that moment and stop looking in the other backyard. What do you think about that, Sean? You like that?
Yeah.
Nothing to add.
I always read other books while I'm running games.
Do you?
Yeah, it's a terrible habit. Right now, I picked up another Star Wars. I
got a Call of Cthulhu game coming up. Did you prep for that? No, too busy reading Scum and Villainy.
I did read some Call of Cthulhu. I didn't want to get too far ahead of myself. So then I started reading Force and Destiny.
But even if you take and maybe I'm taking a step too far, but not reading other stuff or staying immersed in a certain type of genre, but I think it is very tempting, especially with the cool social media stuff that's out there. And there's some incredible kick-ass games and events happening. It's very easy to go, I want to be in that. That sounds amazing. And yeah, sometimes you go, wow, that's cool. Huh. I'll make a note. Maybe I'll get back to that someday. Maybe that'll be the next thing. But until such time, let's stick where we are. Yeah. No, I like it. That's a good metaphor. It's a good way to go. All right. Thank you, Gabe. Excuse me. All right. Harrigan emailed us on episode 273 talking about consequences. Guys, regarding consequences in RPGs, episode 273, both your GM styles sound pretty adversarial. Ooh. Which is fine, but there's a whole other school of thought around how to play RPGs, taking into account stance, actor, author, director, and more collaborative storytelling techniques. Worth exploring in a future episode, perhaps, as it gets into separating player from character knowledge, sharing the fiction creation with the whole table, etc. Without going down that bunny trail right now, how about this question? Do either of you change your GM style depending on the system and the group of players you have? Some story game techniques have been creeping into trad games for a while now. Wonder how you are both handling these. Bennies, for example, in the latest edition of Savage Worlds can now be used to influence the story. A pretty significant change. Do you stick to your instincts and tried and true GM guns no matter what? Or can old dogs learn new tricks? What do you think of more modern systems that handcuff the GM, like Numenera, where GM interruptions are a mechanic instead of the GM just getting shouty and sulky when the players aren't listening? Anyway, keeping on. Happy 2020, and good luck with EverCon, Brett. Harrigan.
Woof. Woof, woof.
Yeah?
Woof.
I think, what's interesting to me, if I break down some of the... So when I read things like GM interruptions, I read through that, I'm like, I already do that. I don't need a mechanic for that. That's the first thing I think of when I read some of that stuff. And somebody wants to influence the story, I think, my group doesn't need that. We already do stuff like that. Now, that said, once I started playing outside of my home group with other players who don't know how we do things at Brett's table, it's really handy to have some of those tools out there, or mechanics and so forth, so that people can play a certain way. Or then like, hey, this is the type of experience I want to have. Having some of those tools handy, story game techniques or even trad game techniques, vice versa, utilizing them to help bring a certain feel or whatever it is to the game at hand. I find that I use more of that stuff and modify my GMing techniques more on the players I have than the system. If I'm playing with people who have never played with before, have no idea how I game master or what Avalon is, for example, or whatever the case is, I want to make sure that I've got system mechanics and all this stuff because I want to be able to give these players all the right tools, approaches, and so forth so that they can interact and have the most amount of fun. If it's with my home group, I can say things like, hey, this is how... the bonds in Delta Green work, and this is how we're going to break them down. This is what happens when you fuck this up and you go a little crazy and you piss off your ex-wife and she takes your kid from you and you can't see them anymore. And we go through that. My buddy Lenny was playing his character had lost enough sanity that he should have been temporarily insane by the rules. However, we're playing, and he just naturally had his character behaving in a temporarily insane fashion. Sean's getting a phone call, apparently.
What in the hell is she doing?
So Lenny's character starts going temporarily insane, and he goes a little crazy. He does something stupid. He ends up getting eaten by a shoggoth. Oh, so bad for Lenny. Had I been with another group of people, a different player, I would have said, "You lost a bunch there. Let's see if you're temporarily insane," and utilize the mechanic. So I guess, long way around here again, I tend to try to utilize different jamming styles and tools and things within the game systems to help influence players, so that not that they're doing it right, but so that they can have the most fun. Because if the setting requires sanity to be a big player, I want to make sure I'm using that stuff correctly and I'm giving them all the right bits and pieces so that they can have a good time. And that usually happens at a convention game, where I want to make sure I curate that experience as best I can for somebody. So I've learned some new stuff. There's some new cool things out there. Other stuff I read, I go, if I don't think I'd ever run this game at a con. If I run this with my friends, this mechanic, I don't necessarily need that. We already do something like that anyway. That's how I see it. Sean, what do you think?
I don't play with, so I'm thinking of every person that I play with in every group that I'm currently running games for, which is about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
You got like 2 or 3 groups.
Probably
going, dude.
10 people total.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Many are not of the. We're not playing games that have radical rules. That's a bad word because they're not radical. They're not systems like Numenera or a Cypher system with GM intrusions. We're not running Savage Worlds with bennies. We're not running Star Wars Fantasy Flight games with dark side, light side points.
Funky dice, none of that.
I'm not playing DCC with funky dice.
Yep.
Or Powered by the Apocalypse with moves. So many of the people that I play with are of the very traditional role-playing game background mindset.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the game master. I provide the scene. They react to the situation at hand. Am I opposed to them saying, hey, would it be okay if I could do this? Could I spend a point of inspiration to just this occurs? Or
influence something in some way.
Yeah, I have this item.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I would be open to that. Like, I'm not that heavy-handed. But if I were to sit down and say, okay, unless it's like unless it's like their background of their player character, and they would say, hey, I wrote out my character background. Here's all the background, which is what Crystal did for Call of Cthulhu, or Jeff in D&D, Tomb of Annihilation, whatever. Anything outside of that, if I ask them, hey, man, you tell me what's going on. You tell me the name of the tavern. You tell me what the bartender looks like. I don't think my players would go, oh, okay, cool. And then they would just spout that off. I think they could, but I don't think they're used to that being turned on them in that
honestly,
way.
I'll tell you, Sorcery in the Table is one of the newer things. It's been out forever and ever, but it's one of those things that was newer to my group, and I started doing it after running that way at cons and running with kids and other people I hadn't run before, getting them more involved and saying, hey, and instead of being stuck, and so what I did was next time I got stuck in with a name, I said, Lenny, I need a name, a farmer, cow farmer. He goes, oh, it's McMasters. Thank you, McMasters. Cool. It's old man McMasters, blah, 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 blah. Hey, I need this. And somebody spouts it out. And I'm playing with a bunch of guys who, one, I played with forever, but two, they like to game. They all game master at some point or another. We all have a good time, sharing the table that way. So I think that's a piece that has creeped into my games, and I've formalized a thing that happened regularly, because it used to be if you saw somebody struggling or whatever it is, Alpha be running, and I would say, hey, I walk up to the barkeep and say, hey, Skippy. Then suddenly the barkeep's name is Skippy. That's just what happened. There were only certain players in the group that did that naturally, and everybody just went, oh, that's his thing, her thing, or his thing, or her thing. Like, that was only relegated. So what I started doing was trying to take that and pushing that around so that when JR wasn't normally the guy who did that, ask him specifically, JR, I need a thing. Help me out here, big guy. And he goes, oh, yeah, sure. Here's the deal. Here's what it looks like. Here's what this is. And by opening that up, then other people who hadn't normally done that, they're like, oh, I can do that too. Some people are like, I don't feel like it. Give it to Lenny. Okay, fine. I don't care. But, yeah.
And I think, I might have a player that can do it, but I think it depends to what extent. And so I'm not opposed to any changes or implementing things that are off the cuff. It doesn't bother me any. The thing that bothers me and the way that stuff like that gets manipulated in my games that really will present the adversarial Sean is when it's used, it's abused, or it doesn't make sense and it's a heavy-handed thing. Jeff trying to make 5 actions in a round because he wants to do something. Yes, I get the rule of cool. Do not get me wrong. I've run with this guy for 40 years.
Yeah.
That's his shtick. I want to be able to do all this crap. And I'm like, come on, dude. You got to kind of play within the bounds of the game.
Break it down.
Yeah, everybody's going to want to do it, and you're going to want to do it all the time because I let you do it this one time.
Yeah.
I don't mind it. Like, if it makes sense and it's super awesome and it's the one killing blow to the big bad evil guy.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, man. All right, go, dude. Or give me a roll and see if you can pull this off. And if you roll really, really well, man, you get that. Absolutely.
My crew, when I hear one of the things that Harrigan says is like games that handcuff the DM, like Numenera, the GM interruptions are a mechanic. I know people who played Numenera and whatnot, and they would take serious umbrage at being told that they were handcuffed because they really like that. And I think there's, the whole influence the story component. I have to admit that there's a piece of influencing the story that a player just goes, nah, I don't like that. That rankles me a bit. And part of the problem is because I see abuse, even if it hasn't happened yet. I'm like, this is going to get stupid. And I know for a fact that if I actually did it and ran it, 99.999% of people I run with, I would never have the problem. But it's totally a Brett thing where I'm like, this will be abused. This right here, this is a downfall of society. This will wreck everything. Yeah.
It's the thing that will bring upon the apocalypse
of this gaming system is this thing. It doesn't mean I read it, I don't like it. I will say, though, that I will try it. Because I don't know in a gaming system if I'm going to like it yet until I've really tried it. Now, there are some games I read and I'm like, I don't want to try that. Right? I had Invisible Sun for a while, read it. I'm like, I don't want to try this. Nah, not gonna. Now, I could play it at some point and go, wow, this is pretty cool. I feel like a dumbass. I should have hung on to that sucker. Should have done that. But whatever. My choices. But the other piece is I know who I play with and the amount of fun we have, the type of fun we have together. And we've talked about this before. Do I need certain mechanics for certain things? No, because we do it naturally. However, because I'm running more and more games at conventions now than I ever did when I was much younger, I like to make sure that whatever game I'm running, I'm helping it shine, and so that the players can have the most amount of fun. So my GM style changes more so that the players can have the most amount of fun as possible. So if that meant influence the story, if that meant source the table more, or whatever other component you have out there, I'm fine with that because I want people to have a good time.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Wow.
That was off the cuff there, Harrigan. So, I mean, this could easily turn into something a little bit different. When you talk about how to play RPGs, taking into account the stance, actor, author, director, and so forth. That's interesting. Some of that stuff I have a natural dislike for. When I read some of this stuff, I'm like, But then again, I have to take a breath, get a drink, and say, all right, let's clear your brain and go back and reread that thing. So I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying I don't have enough experience with those, with that particular type of school of thought that you're talking about there. So I may bristle at it at first, but then the other part of me goes, you know what, though? You don't know enough about that. Let's do some reading. Let's see what's out there. Do a little more research. So anyway, good stuff, Harrigan. These type of comments and questions are handy because I think, we've said this before, introspection, self-reflection, it's good, especially for a hobby. It's good stuff. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Harrigan. Jason, he messaged us on Patreon. I think this goes back to solo player games.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to put it out there on how much I appreciate DMing a game for one player. Solo games, as they are known, have an amazing ability to provide such a different format of storytelling. It, to me, feels way more detailed and cinematic by focusing on one individual character. Don't get me wrong, I love DMing games of any size, but the addition of more players usually means less detail in character, streamlining or merging elements of the story, etc. Let me know how many others out there in tabletop role-playing game land love solo games as much as I do.
I have not run a solo game in a very, very long time. I've done them as a form of side quest where you have a side one-off piece, but it's been a long time since I've even done that. Just hasn't been a thing. Now, that said, some of the crew in my home group love doing it. Nick will run a small role-playing game with Zave, or Lenny will do something with Alpha or whatever. Stuff's happening, and they're running small little one-on-one games, and it's pretty cool. I've done 2 players in me, usually is as small as it gets. At least has been. At least that's the most recent. Should probably do that more, just to try it.
So if I ever run another Star Wars game, and maybe any game, I want to have, my session 0 would be one-on-one. And either run it in the meta or actually run them through something.
That was an old Vampire the Masquerade thing.
Was it?
Each storyteller should pull, as I'm remembering it, this was the cool piece. If you could pull it off, you pull the player aside and you run through their embrace, how you became a vampire. You run through that with them. And it's a foregone conclusion you become a vampire. Let's go through this.
Right.
We used to do it individually, like away from everybody. Oh, secrets. And then I did it once where I ran it from the whole table. And the fear I always had was that it was going to be boring as fuck for everybody else listening to it. Turned out to be a wonderful entertainment for everybody involved because they're like in the moment, oh, that was cool. Oh, fuck, it's my turn. You can tell Brett's going around the table. It's getting uglier as he goes. Shit. He started off pretty light. It's getting darker and darker. Crap, I'm the last guy. This is not going to be good. But it's fun. And you could do that type of thing even, as I say, in a group, where everybody can kind of see it. This can be kind of neat, too.
Yeah. Well,
slick.
It would be kind of a Star Wars approach where, you start out, you go so far, bring them into one location, and then it ends. Go to the next player character, something, and something happens. They end up in the same place. And then session 1, everybody's in the bar looking at each other. Maybe there's a connection, maybe there's not.
Yeah, I like it.
Well, we'll see.
Cool. I like it. We've had this topic come up periodically, the solo games thing. If people out there, hit us up in the forums, email, Patreon, voicemail, however you want to get at us. Let us know if you're running a solo game, if you have, what your favorite rule set for it is. Do you have a rule set that's specific for solo play, like Cthulhu Confidential or something like that, or anything? Let us know what it is you're doing and in that space, because I'm interested in it. I think it'd be kind of cool to learn more about it. So let's see, last one here today. Corey, Man of War, comment about running for kids. And I'm going to say, well, you're going to be there Saturday, so you'll see the brothers win this weekend.
I better.
Right. Yeah, of course.
It's the only reason I'm going.
Oh.
Wow.
Oh, thanks. Anyway, Corey says, I started running my kids in AD&D when they were 6 and 5. I gave them some parameters and explained the character sheet and told them they could try anything and I'd adjudicate the results. They grasped it right away. They've had some very imaginative uses of things. For example, using the spell Stone Shape to capture carrion crawlers' tentacles so they would trap them without fighting them and bypassing the trapped creatures. That's pretty cool. They looked up stuff.
I wonder how many kids are more apt to not kill the creature. Like, I don't want to kill it. I just want to make sure it's not dangerous or minimize.
We've talked about this a little bit before, and I'm going to do a quick aside here. So I have seen small, adorable children. Don't hurt them, save them, talk to them. That kind of cliche, if you will.
Right.
I also have people like my daughter, who will.
Come on.
Well, I guess we
unique. She falls under the Brett tree.
I guess we need to kill her and rip her guts open to find the key she swallowed. And I'm the size of a goblin. If I skin one of the ones we just killed, can I wear it as a disguise, Dad? So I've seen all of that.
So there's Alana, and then there's everybody else.
Yeah, that's how I see it. Anyway, they looked stuff up in the PHB and came up with creative ways around things, as well as possible creative interpretations of spells. I love it. Listening to the podcast episode and quotes like "try anything" without context to that statement and "I should be able to do what I want," etc., led me to a question for you all. At what point does it get away from being a game with parameters like AD&D, DCC RPG, Call of Cthulhu, etc., and turn into some kind of weird Calvin ball where the DM/GM storyteller lets the player do whatever they want, and the gameplay doesn't even remotely resemble a game the group is supposedly playing? Curious about all your thoughts on that matter.
Calvin ball.
Yeah, if you haven't read Calvin and Hobbes, you missed some cool stuff. Calvin Ball, just so everybody knows, was the game Calvin and his stuffed tiger imaginary friend Hobbes would play together, and the only rule was they could never have the same rules twice. And we've talked about this in various forms throughout, and it is interesting. People will be like, well, and we talked about this in Christ not that long ago with, if I'm playing a game and I house ruled it too much, is it even D&D anymore?
Right.
I house ruled this. It's not even that. I did whatever I wanted to. It's that kind of free ass. What I think the general answer is everybody having fun and a good time? And I know people are going to say, oh, it's a fucking cop out, Brett, you dumbass, blah, blah. But seriously, if you got 6 people sitting at a table and playing Calvin Ball RPG is your idea of a good time, okay. You know?
Right, you're allowed one cop out per quarter.
Per quarter?
This is January. You're using it a little early.
A little early this year.
Early
this year. Well, thank you.
Something to keep in mind come February and March.
I have to take a harder stance in February and March. Thank God February's well, see, I do this on purpose because February's a short month.
Always thinking this guy.
I'm trying. But anyway, I think it is interesting, and I think I think we talked about this a little bit on the episode when we first started chatting through this, and Corey, forgive me if I didn't, or we didn't, I should say. But I think one of the things that you say you did there was I gave them some parameters, explained the character sheet, and they could try anything, and I'd adjudicate the results. You can try, I'll adjudicate, and you gave them parameters and things that they could work with. I think sometimes when people fail to explain that you can do pretty much anything, you could try all sorts of stuff. There are parameters to the world and the setting, and there's some rules that kind of bind things, help us tell, blah, blah, blah. I think sometimes if you don't set that stage right out of the gate saying, hey, look, there are rules and things we're going to use to help me as game master, or we as the whole table to adjudicate how this particular thing is going to go. If you don't remind people of that sometimes, it can get a little crazy on you. It can. What are you thinking, Sean?
Well, that demographic is beyond me. I don't run a lot of games.
Children,
for kids,
what the hell?
You know, there's no legal, restrictions, mind you. But so it's, for me, it's a little bit different. Like I guess if I had kids I was running for, I could give a shit, whatever.
It's kind of interesting. I thought about
roll
I
fives.
read this.
If you roll fives, you succeed. Oh, next time, got to roll threes. Okay.
And depending what kids you're playing with, if you're having a good time, people are just having a hoot and they just don't care.
Yeah. The kids don't care. They're not going to call me out on anything.
AJ would.
He's not 6.
I know. Well, he's 13 now, but he would have.
Wow.
Because that's my boy's nature,
Again.
Different kid. He grew up in a gaming household.
Brett Tree. Yeah.
Clunk. Oh, look at that. It's a stone dead apple is what that is. Anyway, point is, I don't know, man. I think, what is my point? If you're all having a good time and it is a weird-ass Calvin ball game and that's your thing, that's fine. I think the best criticism I could level on somebody doing that is like, wow, that would not work for me. That would drive me fucking nuts.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you're bad. I totally am not. It would drive me freaking bananas. You, sir and or madam, and your crew are having a hell of a good time. You folks keep doing what you folks want to do. Go for it.
The only caveat to that I would speak up on is if you're trying to teach the kids boundaries and rules. Right? There's kind of a, hey, let me explain to you how this works.
Yeah.
You can't do this, and this is why. Like, there's rules, Otherwise, hey, go down to the store, steal a pack of smokes, whatever. It's chaos. It's anarchy. Like, you don't want to raise kids like that. So they're...
No, in a D&D game, to use that example, like, hey, I want to steal from the king. I want to pick his pocket at the ball. Now, you realize if you get caught, he could throw you in prison and cut your head off. Really? Yeah. Well, I want to do it anyway. Well, you thrown in prison, they're going to cut your head off tomorrow. Oh, well, you did warn me. So sometimes you got to do that. I don't know. It's so goofy to me because there's some of that stuff borders on the don't tell me how to have fun.
Right.
And who the hell are we to tell you how to have fun? The best thing I could do, the strongest thing I could say is, wow, I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
Or that does not look like any fun to me. To you, however, y'all are having an awesome goddamn time. You keep being awesome and keep having fun. People watched Sean and I get drunk and play Happy Salmon and almost get kicked out of a bar in Lake Geneva. Some people thought we were morons and didn't think it was any fun. Other people were having fun with us, thought it was a great damn time.
The minute you realize that people are scrutinizing you, you get them to do what you're doing.
And then suddenly they have fun.
And suddenly, it's not.
So suddenly
it's not
you have Dave Beatty.
anymore.
You have Dave Beatty running around the table.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
All right, let's move on. Topic time.
Yeah, get into the main topic already, these freaking guys. All right.
So Kojo hit us with a question for all BSers in general. He's talking about, and he says, I was curious what kind of system-neutral GM aids you keep in your toolbox to help you craft games and worlds and so forth. Are there any things you have that you find yourself going back to again and again? His examples of things around his shelf they pulled up periodically: the Tome of Adventure Design by Frog God Games, the Alphabet series by Goodman Games, including the Dungeon Alphabet by Mr. Curtis, the Monster One by Joe Bittman, Random Esoteric Creature Generator by James Raggi, the Storyteller Thesaurus, which is James Ward and Ann Brown, How to Write Adventure Modules That Don't Suck by Goodman Games. So, Sean, I had a couple, and two of them I do use the Alphabet series. I have both of those, which I find fun inspiration to page through and just kind of get my gears working. Sometimes like, I'm looking at running a D&D game for the kids or for my buddies. I want something new or different. And these are two books I can crawl through and say, that's interesting. Oh, that gives me an idea. And then I'm off and running. So I see them as pretty decent inspiration. Is there anything that I've got a couple others here that I kind of scribbled down before the show. Is there anything that you have read or continue to go back to, or do you have things that you just read once and it's always stuck with you ever since? What do you think?
Well, I
don't read. I know.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying. I am trying to. So Toolbox, I took this as a hey, what do you pack in a bag and
well, that's perfect too.
Run a game with. Like, what do you need? Index cards. We talked about this last time.
Yeah, we did. And I look at what he said, and that's a very good, that's kind of the next piece, I think about stuff that I look at ahead of time, and then there's stuff I always bring with me, Well, so I always have
I gotta
to do stuff
So
with.
are we talking about, like, sitting down and having reference material to come up with, to get the brain cranked?
Pretty much.
Or are we talking about hey, I'm going to go to the table with a...
If you'd have read the notes, you'd have known what this was. Every quarter I get to bust Sean's balls.
Yep, once a quarter. Yeah, there it's
burn them all in
Burn
January.
them all tonight.
Burn them all in January.
Yeah.
So what I'm talking about here, and I think we could segue into the other aspect of toolbox perspective, but think about, things you keep in your toolbox help you craft your games, the worlds, and so forth. Like when you're getting ready, when you were thinking about, for myself, I've mentioned this, we had an episode on this a while back, Stealing Cthulhu by Graham Walmsley. I've read this book. I like it. I pull it out periodically when I'm thinking about, hey, I want to run a Call of Cthulhu type game, and I want some, I think there's a way, how could I pull that sucker up, page through, I'm like, here we go. I don't always do exactly the example in the book, but it gives me something to kick me and make me get a better idea what I like to do. The same, I like to read the Play Dirty series by John Wick. If nothing else, sometimes they're just flat out cathartic and funny. Some of the stuff he had in there. Some of it is very interesting too. There are certain, in the spirit of kind of what I said up front, if I'm going to be running an Avalon campaign for my home crew, I have audiobooks that I listen, because I got an hour drive each way to work. So I've got a bunch of Black Company novels by Glenn Cook, the Agile Nick series by Paulus Kemp. If I'm going to run a modern magic game like my Bad Magic, I'll buzz through my Hellboy graphic novels, maybe even watch a Hellboy movie type of thing. But those are things that I find myself grabbing onto. I don't old Dragon magazines sometimes if I'm going to run a D&D game or fantasy game. I'm like, pull out the old PDFs. I have the big CD collection they sold ages back. I'll buzz through a bunch of those. Like, oh yeah, let me look up the ecology of the Wemmick or the ecology of the this, just for funsies, and see what I can do to get inspired by something, to add a twist or a change to something or other. Do you have anything like that in your toolbox?
Funsies.
Yeah.
Brett said.
I said funsies.
Funsies.
I'm
gonna have to snip that out and use it as a little thingy.
Yeah, I get one Susanism every quarter too. I'm burning all of it.
I don't have a lot. I mean, I started reading John Wick's Play Dirty.
Do those type of books, you saying you don't have a lot of them?
Well, even Never Unprepared.
Yep.
Sly Flourishes. Why am I blanking?
Phil Vecchione stuff.
I know Phil is never.
Yeah, I know.
Never
I was going to say Never Unprepared and all that.
Yeah.
The Lazy Dungeon Master.
Lazy Dungeon Master.
Yeah.
Some of those, but I don't go back to them over and over. Or hey, I'm going to sit down because I don't do a lot of my own prep.
So that's interesting.
I don't write a lot of my own adventures, actually.
So when you read that stuff, if you buzz through like Never Unprepared by Phil or Sly's, Lazy Dungeon Master, if I go through Stealing Cthulhu, if I gave it to you, you'd be like, oh, that was neat. You're kind of a one and done with that stuff. Is that what I'm hearing? Like, hey, I read that. That gave me some neat stuff, and file it away.
Dude, I think I've got.
I'm not saying it's bad if you do. It's just a different approach.
I think I've got problems. I think I got problems. Yeah, that's my wife. She'll tell you.
Let me text her. I could have her call you.
I know. I'll read it, and if I continue to read it all the way through, that's one trick.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the problem is if I don't read it all the way, and I'll absorb some of it, but I probably won't take a note. I probably won't absorb it into memory. Therefore, what I read probably is fairly useless. Not the text that they wrote and the information.
No, but if it doesn't.
I didn't absorb it. Me personally. Yeah. That's me, all me. So I think it would help if I sat down and go, okay, I'm going to start a homebrew campaign. I got to write up some encounters, some NPCs, some issues that the player character is going to run into.
Mm-hmm.
And then what am I thinking? Oh, read John Wick or,
I picked up a couple Kobold complete books, like Complete Dungeon Designer Magic. Kobold.
Sure.
Had a couple of those. I picked up a few of those in PDF. I've read Robin's Laws to Good Game Mastery. I find reading GM advice stuff for some weird reason, is interesting to me.
It is?
It is. Yeah. I don't mind reading it. And sometimes I actually like reading the old stuff in the old Dragon magazines, if for no other reason than to kind of go back to Harrigan's comment, go, wow, we used to do that. Like, I don't think I could get away with that at my table anymore. Even with my old cranky grognard buddies, I don't think we could pull that one off anymore. We haven't done that in forever. And it's also interesting sometimes to read through some of the old forum articles and stuff to see, this problem I think is really unique. They've been having the same goddamn problem players argument since, issue 2 of Dragon. Wow, this has been a long time problem. I like reading the stuff. I have a tendency, like I said, the ones I go back to, I'll reread or I skim through them to get inspiration to kind of kick the mental juices around. But I think you have an interesting point. I am building my own adventures, my own campaign settings and so forth when I do it. And if I was going to do I'm going to read, Return to the Temple of Elemental Evil because I want to run a 3E campaign or something like that, I can just read that.
Right.
I don't need to read how to, design an adventure.
Yeah.
But do you read, like the John Wick stuff is a lot of it, the play dirty pieces are like game mastering advice. Do you like or read game mastering articles and stuff like that? Does that?
Yeah, I don't mind it.
Do you like podcasting about game mastering?
I actually listen to a lot more podcasts. Well, even RPGs podcasts are fairly limited. I probably listen to more podcasts about podcasting.
Isn't that crazy?
Than role-playing games for a variety of different reasons.
No, it makes sense.
So if I heard good advice in a podcast and I wanted to make note of it, that's the problem. I'm not kind of putting it to memory. I'm not documenting it. I'm not taking any notes. I'm not writing it on index cards. So it's very in the moment and it just kind of disappears. So, yeah.
So let me think about that. So what's interesting to me is if I hear it, like I go pick an old Misdirected Mark episode to listen to and, hey, yeah, I got this really cool idea from something Phil and Chris talked about. I liked it, locked it away in my brain, and I used it. I can do that. It's not like I have some weird-ass superpower. A lot of people can, I heard a thing, I remember the thing, and I used the thing. It sounds like when you hear something like that, it's like perking somewhere in your subconscious, but it almost feels more like when you read the Call of Cthulhu rules, you're like, I've read the rules, I understand it. If the rules have a new cool way to do something, that's kind of how the rubber meets the road for you versus, hey, I listened to these guys talk about this new cool way to do treasure. Therefore, next time I run D&D, I'm going to try that. You're more of the if it's in the game I'm running, then you're going to use it type of thing. I don't know if I even explained that right.
I think I know what you're saying.
Like if I said, hey man, you could use bennies, you could use these little chips, you could give people stuff that could influence the game.
Yeah.
You're like, that sounds kind of cool. And then it goes away until I throw Savage Rolls in front of you. Hey, this reminds me of the thing Brett talked about. Does that kind of make you do stuff and as far as like influence you? Is that more how it happens?
Yeah. Oh, for like through the rules? Yeah, more likely, yes. So if I read Cypher System and went, this is kind of a cool thing, you know, for difficulty, if there's a level, it's always times 3, so that's the difficulty. So it's a level 1, you got to roll above a 3. And you can, add things to increase your chances or lower the difficulty, right?
But you're not going to take that then and reference that over and over again as like a thing to do somewhere else.
No, I would probably stick with, in that specific instance, I would stick with Cypher because that's kind of core to those rules. I'm not opposed to implementing something cool that I would come across. Like I like momentum in Star Trek and destiny points in Star Wars where you get this ebb and flow swing, which D&D doesn't inherently have. It's kind of the DM to just, or the consequences of the player characters inherently, but there isn't a mechanic to it.
So you're not like How to Write Adventure Modules That Don't Suck by Goodman Games. Kojo mentioned I had that for a little bit. Started to read it. I did not like it. I got rid of it. It just was boring to me. I know a lot of people really enjoyed it. It just was not for me. But that type of book, when you go to a con and you're walking through the hall and you see, the dungeon alphabet, like, hey, here's a whole, A to Z, literally A to Z inspiration of different components about dungeons. You don't go, hey, that'd be a cool book to have on my shelf so I could reference that. That's not a draw for you. Is that what you're saying?
It isn't. And part of me is, my rationale for it not being interesting is because I would rather look at my own creativity. It could be inspirational, but I would much rather watch a movie and go, how would this be presented as a role-playing game?
I think that between movies, even actual play podcasts I've heard people talk about, and some of the cool TV series that are out there. I'm currently watching the new Netflix Witcher show, and I can't tell if I like it or hate it yet. I'm going to figure that out later. But there's pieces of it where I watch it, and I'm like, I could steal that. Yeah, I could do that.
Yeah.
Oh, that would work. So are there any of those types of movies that every time you watch it, you find to be inspirational in that way? Kind of a go-to movie? Yeah. I mean, we all have them.
No, not really. I was watching Die Hard over the holidays. Great Christmas movie.
It is a Christmas movie.
Totally.
I'll fight anyone who says it's not.
And I think about how he goes through the airport, gets picked up by the limo driver.
It just gets crazy.
It's hilarious, right?
Yeah.
And then, it's a solo game.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's a two-person game. He and his wife.
Well, sure.
You cut back and forth, back and forth, back and
forth. Yeah,
forth.
but if you're playing Holly, you're not doing a hell of a lot.
I don't know, man. Or you could be you and Hans Gruber at odds with each other.
Sure.
Anyway, carry on.
Gaming ABS presents Die Hard role-playing scenario.
A Christmas Story. Yeah. We're doing it right now, though. We're both taking that movie.
Right.
Spoilers, people. There's a guy named Hans Gruber, and he falls off the building.
We never told him
Son
what
of
happened.
A bitch.
Jesus.
Oh, shit.
Damn it.
Anyway.
Brett, can't take you anywhere.
I fucking just totally ruined what you're saying. I'm sorry.
You can take, maybe you're the Hans Gruber guys.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah, the crew.
Right. And you've got John McClane effing your shit up. Now, that would be a role-playing game.
Yeah.
Right? Don't play the good guy. Play the bad guys.
You got one turd in the punch bowl who you can't get rid of. Keep slaughtering your people.
Just a fly in the ointment.
Call me Roy. Great.
Yeah. So you take that and you're like, okay, what are you trying to do? All right, I got to break into this computer. Okay, give me some skill checks. Oh, blah, blah, blah. The only way that it's going to happen is if this occurs.
Is this because you're a visual learner, Sean? Is this your thing?
It very may well be.
I'm not saying that. I'm picking on you slightly, but that would totally be fucking legit.
I'm a visual and a repetitive guy. Rules forever just have never. I cannot sit down, read a rule book, and go, "Oh, I totally got this," and then come to the table and quote every rule that's relevant to the particular situation. So if a combat breaks out, I'm like, "Man, I read it. I don't remember any of it. Let's break it out again." Yeah,
let's figure it out.
Yeah, and then we run it, and then we run it again. And then we run it again, and I'll be like, okay, this is the way that works. Doc used to get pissed off at me at the table all the time because he'd be running a game. He'd be like, all right, it's your turn. I'm like, okay, I do this. While you're sneak attacking? I'm like, yeah. Well, then you roll a D6. Oh.
Fuck. Sorry.
Yeah, and he's like 3 or 4 times he has to tell me that. Well, 5th time, Sean's like, I'm sneak attack.
But there's something to be said for that, too. If I were to say, hey, this Stealing Cthulhu book, man, it's really cool to help you do, your own Call of Cthulhu type adventures. It's really cool. You'd be like, great. You read it, go, okay, that's cool. But if you're not somebody who is going to read this stuff, textbooky, research style, if that's not your thing, but there are other avenues for that. The Black Company novels, I've stolen a ton of things through them. The Edgell Nick stuff, I've steal stuff from that periodically. Hell, I even I have audiobooks of the first 2. I don't have the third one yet. The original Dragonlance Chronicles. listen to them for nostalgia purposes, but I was like, huh, that thing in there, that's kind of neat. I'm going to steal that. I'm going to steal that thing. I forgot that was there. I'm going to use that again. And sometimes that type of inspiration, just to figure out how the hell you're going to do something, what's going to help you make that encounter a little more fun. Sometimes just watching or consuming media in some way that's best for you to consume it, that's in the genre or the feeling, can be pretty handy. If you're going to run high fantasy type of thing, maybe somebody would say, oh, you got to watch Lord of the Rings. That's really, really cool. Oh, if you're going to do gritty something, maybe you watch this other thing or whatever the case is. So I would never deign to say that doing it your way is lesser than the way I do by reading different stuff. I just think it's a different way to consume it.
Yeah.
Just a different way to be inspired by stuff that helps you get better at things. Because even if you take the Die Hard movie, you watch that, let's just use an example, and then you're running a heist game, or you're running something, and you say to your crew, you're like, you guys have seen Die Hard, right? Yeah. So this is that scene? Yeah, imagine that right there. We've talked about this before, where you can grab a thing that's pop culture common knowledge. Have you guys all seen Stranger Things? Good. Remember the scene? Yeah, that's what it feels like right now. Remember how fucking creepy that was on that piece? Yeah. Oh, have you seen the new It movie? Okay, this is like that, but in an alleyway, not a sewer. Okay, I'm creeped the fuck out. Being able to use that as a reference sometimes, just descriptive-wise, you read through like the dungeon alphabet and so forth, or the monster alphabet. It has some good things. Hey, here's some descriptors and things you can use. And sometimes a shortcut to that is a movie reference that a lot of people know, or some other universal quote-unquote thing. If you're playing a Star Wars game, you say, this is Hoth. Second movie, yes, Empire Strikes Back, Hoth. This is where you're at. Wow, really? Yes, this is it. Okay. Images are conjured and people have got a thing.
No, it's every Imperial structure. It's all steel walls, steel floors, very clean.
This is very Imperial.
Right.
I got it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you say this looks like a Star Wars Imperial structure, I have an image in my head.
Yeah, because they're all the same.
Yeah, I'm not even a huge Star Wars fan, and I'm like, oh, I know
There's
what
no
that looks like.
couches and cushions.
No, everything is severe. All the chairs have no backs on them. There's no guard railings, but the guys that fire the big gun,
guard
you know
railings?
that. There's no OSHA.
No
Fuck
OSHA.
that. None. Let those bastards die. That's the deal.
Perfect example. And then everything Bounty Hunter or Fringe is all sandy, dirt, dirty.
Yeah.
Got a theme going on.
It's interesting now that we kind of ended up in this place. Koji was saying, hey, what are the aids you keep in your toolbox? And I think other than these books and things, and we've talked to people on here before, if people want to bring up stuff in our forums or write into us and tell us, hey, what you're using. But I really think that those descriptors that Sean is talking about that we're hashing out here, those are some pretty cool toolbox things to have. Not that you have to keep up on every pop culture and watch every Netflix episode or whatever it is. Yeah, Sean's saying yes, you do right now. Yes, you do. But having those references or something you can utilize like that can be pretty damn handy. I think that's a pretty cool way to go. That's good stuff because it's a piece you can have to help you craft your game and the game world and the encounter by a readily available mental picture. Clunk. It's like an Imperial Fortress, except pink. Huh. That's weird. I know what it is. I know what it looks like.
Yeah.
Except it's not slate gray. It's pink.
That's right.
Got it. Cool. All right, man. I'm good.
All right.
So, listeners, folks out there, let us know what you guys are using for what's in your preparation toolbox. Do you keep a store of movie ideas? Do you read novels? Do you have books like, Play Dirty, Stealing Cthulhu, How to Write Adventure Modules? Do you have that type of thing? Is that a go-to for you? Do you have Never Unprepared? Do you crack that sucker out? Do you look up all the other cool stuff by Engine Publishing? What are you grabbing to do this stuff with? And maybe you're doing something totally different than what Sean and I have talked about, because any different way that you're getting inspiration to help you make your games better, and we're talking GM neutral stuff here. Now, it doesn't have to be I shouldn't say GM neutral, system neutral. It's not like a Dungeons & Dragons specific.
Right.
Some of the Cobalt Complete stuff was like, hey, here's how you make magic work. Hey, here's how you build a campaign. It isn't just for here's how you make your Star Wars game the best Star Wars game. And maybe you have found something that was setting specific or game specific that you found universally applies to you. Let us know about that too. There's all sorts of cool ways to skin the sucker.
Yeah.
We good?
We're good. Go ahead and die
All right,
roll,
moving on.
man. Die roll. Got a few points this week from Game and a Geekery you want to share with you. First one, Fantasy Flight Interactive to close its doors. I don't even know if it's been announced officially. Because Sean...
It's in the wild.
Sean knows the person that heads up that little outfit.
It was posted publicly, wasn't it?
Put it out on LinkedIn. So I asked them on Twitter, hey, is this true? Nobody's responded yet.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll find out if it's true eventually.
Maybe it'll get absorbed in an Asmodee Digital. But I know he's out of job. And so is like the 6 other or 7 people that work with him.
That sucks.
So there's a D&D book coming.
Is it?
It's listed on Amazon. It hasn't been disclosed.
It's just listed like D&D book titled TBD.
They're going to announce it on January 9th. This is the word.
Yeah.
It's going to be It's going to be released in March. That's not that far.
No.
What do you think it's going to be, Brett?
Well, it's going to have Dungeons and Dragons in it. The hell do I think it is?
I've seen somebody on Twitter, I think Sly Flourish put it out there. Mike Shea probably put it out there. On Twitter, and a bunch of people are commenting all over the place.
I want a Greyhawk book.
Nah.
Ain't going to happen. I want one. Again?
Yeah. There's no Forgotten Realms source book for 5e.
Sword Coast.
Oh, that's, yeah.
5e.
Yes, I
Sword
understand,
Coast.
Brad.
Okay.
You're right. I don't think, I still think it's going to be a Forgotten Realms book. Because Eberron came out.
I would actually like, yeah, I know, but I would like Greyhawk or even Dragonlance. Just one of those. I'd love it. That'd be cool. Dark Sun. They have a lot of goddamn properties that they could play with.
Yeah. They could keep 5e going for a long time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I hope it's Greyhawk, but we'll see what happens.
I think it's Forgotten Realms. Because they released a die set that's Realmsy.
Yeah, every adventure they put out has been Realmsy.
True. Anyways, let us know what you think. By the time this drops, everybody will know.
We'll find out.
Archaeologists spends over 35 years building a massive scale model of ancient Rome. You gotta click on the link to the article. Man.
Scale like 1 inch equals?
I don't even know.
Oh, it is a 1 to 250 scale model.
It's crazy. Not the Roman Empire, just Rome.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, man. So if you like your little miniatures and train sets,
intense.
you got to look at this thing.
That's pretty intense.
Lou, we'll mention a GoFundMe. We'll have that in the link in the die roll as well if you want to contribute. There's like a 500 gold or above 2,000. So
cool.
Otherwise, I think that's it. Brett, what are we talking about next week?
We've had a couple different listeners bring this up in the forums about backing RPG Kickstarters, what you look for, what you like or don't like.
Or how do you determine which one to back?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if nothing else, Sean and I can tell you at least what we do. whether that has won us any awards, accolades, or who's pissed us off recently. It could turn into I hate this company because they still screwed me. Promise we won't mention Far West. Oh, it's too late. Anyway, we will talk about that next time.
Yeah.
Cool?
Yeah.
We good?
Amazing Alex and I think Peter brought that up on the forums. So
yes, it did.
You, both of you.
Gotta go through it.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, happy 2020, BSers.
Happy 2020.
Thanks for sticking with us.
Yeah, for God's sakes, don't burn your whole once a quarter thing like I did this early in January. Don't do it.
We got a new shirt in the store. Gaming Cops.
Gaming cops.
Yeah. People are going to, I think
Yeah.
that's going to rub people the wrong way. Gaming cops, that sends the wrong message. Yeah, it's supposed to. It's funny. It's tongue in cheek, man.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a joke.
Yeah.
So
There are no gaming cops until now.
yeah. Until
Dun,
now.
dun,
Dun, dun, dun.
All right. Well, check it out.
All right.
Otherwise, I'm Sean.
And I'm Brett. Good night and good game and all.
This episode of Gaming in BS brought to you with the help from the following BSers. Grand Minor, Corey Wynn, Hawk Sparrow, Larry Haupt, Mark Tasaka, Pure, Mongo, Chris Steele, Ron, Bishop Thomas Hook, Rain, Humphrey, Craig, Brandon Barnes, Laramie Wall, Dan LaValle, Jason Hobbs, Sky, Old School DM, Perry Basor, Michael Dinos, Jim Fitzpatrick, Christopher Gray, Bruce Cunnington, John Kayward, Corey Gonzalez, Eileen Barnes, Robert Neiman, Niall Diamond, Howard Bishop, Mark Anthony Benedetti, Eric Salzweedle, Closet Gamer, Jeff Goad, Aaron Coleman, Ray, Otis C, W. Mellencamp, Craig Huber, Rich Wisson, Old Scouser Roleplaying, Jared Rasher, Andy Hall, David F. Baylog, Harrigan, Melissa Bashinsky, Brian Rumble, Henry Newcomb, Eric Tavola, Huss Carl, Roger Blessett, Mark Sohn, Andy Olson, Eric Avia, Ron Blessing, Jeff Seifert, Ghost GM, Mike Hess, Chad Gleeman, Finoff, Josh Wallace, and Marco Froelich. For ways to support the show, head over to gaminginbs.com/support-us. Thanks, BSers.
This has been a Litterbox Studio production.